opening slides. I mean, I don't know. I know it's not exactly like, it's not a proper intro in the sense that like all you should see are those slides coming in and then, you know, with a little intro stock over bit, but we'll get there. Hey, John.
Yeah, at some point we can have a video intro.
Yes.
With theme music.
Yeah. I want to see stuff flying across the screen. You know, some sort of like some sort of Daily Show montage. You know, but just like neurotech equipment. I don't know. You know.
Yeah, I'm also recording.
Okay, cool. Give me 1 second, and we can do this. All right. Well, welcome and bienvenue. So, this is our weekly hack night at NeurotechX San Francisco, and NeurotechX is an international community that facilitates the advancement of neurotechnology. Our pillars are community, education, and innovation. And we have chapters worldwide, many continents, let's say worldwide, and lots of meetups and a very active online community, which you can find on Slack. And get in touch if you don't have a chapter in your town. We can help you start one. If you're at a university, college or university, maybe there's already a student club. And certainly you can catch our newsletter and online materials. And I've got to make that slide not jump to the next. Okay. Thank you. So, yeah, it's July, and another full week of HBM, and also I got to catch these webinars that UC Davis put together. But let me just start by saying, if there's anybody new here this evening, please love to have you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what brings you here. There's no pressure though. But I will jump in then and just say that there was at the beginning of the week, the person whose textbook all ERP researchers have to read, Steve Luck and et al. At the Center for Mind and Brain, UC Davis plus San Diego State University put together a great set of webinars on ERP decoding that I mean, for those who caught the meetup, could catch the agenda, there's a link to, the link is to the erplab.info. Now I'm going to double check. And just make sure you can see that. Well, I talked about ERP core. Okay, sorry. So if you go to the erpinfo.org website, they also don't have a link there. I've got the slides, so I will show you later in an hour or so. And it is what you might guess, which is, using machine learning classification techniques to process ERP data. and both like how to do that, and scripts for doing it. So like a theory and a practicum, in the sense of they've got an add-on to EEG Lab, which is a very commonly used MATLAB toolbox for EEG research. And in addition, they've got these decoding scripts, which again, I can point you to the GitHub from the Luck Labs lab manager. And yeah, it was really quite interesting, because of course I'm looking at this and just thinking, like, this is exactly what we do with MOAB and motor imagery data, and you could quite easily. And the other thing that I did link, which is ERP Core, so they're making 40 subjects worth of data in 7 ERP tasks, publicly available. And so they've made the data available, and have given us, in a sense, baseline ERP decoding results. And in particular, like, what channel did they focus on, and then like what time windows did they find significant. And anyway, jumping ahead to later this evening, but that was really interesting. I'm going to look for those YouTube videos for those that are interested, but we've got the slides and data and code. So I think it's going to be really interesting to turn that into the equivalent pipelines, but using M&E and scikit-learn. So other big news today, but I'm perhaps totally biased in the sense that I think this is big news, that MagStim bought Philips Neuro, or Electrical Geodesics, which is where I used to work. And so yeah, I only heard about this today. This was let me say why I think this is like of interest to perhaps people who didn't work there. Is that Electrical Geodesics is a high density EEG company, and it was bought by Philips, which is obviously a massive multinational, but also a major player in the healthcare market, and very experienced in all areas. Obviously, huge in radiology, and Philips.
Are they a major player in EEG healthcare though?
So they're I mean,
they have a sleep device, right? They have a snazzy sleep device.
Exactly, right. So
otherwise,
clinical EEG is a very different world, right? So I'm not a market analyst, but what I do know in terms of hospital purchasing is that that a lot of purchasing is done in bundles. So it's like, if you're certainly, you get they've got devices that they can sell and can target. And I think this was the really interesting thing, which was, of course, like, why would they buy EGI, which is a high density EEG company, right? So it did seem like, and this is just all my own opinion, it did seem like that they were trying to actually make epilepsy people interested in source imaging, that somehow source results and the fast application was the the teaser. Like, this doesn't cost you anything more in terms of prep. It's actually it's actually in some ways faster than 1020, right? So certainly we've done demos where we've done 250 got 256 electrodes and digitized and set up in less than 10 minutes, right? And therefore, what it really was down to was like, does anybody actually want to look at that data? And and I think that was what really held up. So I know that when Philips announced that they were going to close EGI, I think there was this sense that like Philips had tried and failed to move the epilepsy field, and that because like, I mean, for those that don't know, like what, and I'm very, again, speaking for the US healthcare market, if at all, if anything else, is that CPT codes run your ability to sell devices. And so it's like what you can get reimbursed by insurance companies is how you sell your product, right? So, and the way I've seen this previously is when hospitals are buying MEG systems, right? So MEG, which is a lot more expensive than an EGI system, as in addition to siting and staff and things like that are rather unique. It comes down to like, what am I going to be able to bill for if we get one of these devices? And the other big problem with the CPT codes for EEG is that they are priced. They've got like 1960s pricing, in the sense that like you're talking about a workflow that hasn't dramatically changed in a very long time, and the texts that are trained for this, the people who read them have everybody's got a full-time job, right? And so anything that you're asking them to do new is resistance, and is an uphill battle. And I think there was a real question of I think that Philips said, hey, we're never going to be able to break out of the research market. And and EGI was until then, EGI was very much an SBIR company, right? So it's like, if you're getting grants to do new things in the field and to produce new tools for researchers, then you're that's a way to go, right? And certainly
what is SVIR?
Small Business Innovation Research Grants.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not sure what the Canadian equivalent is, but these are the lifeblood of startups, or the lifeblood of research startups. And if sometimes sometimes EGI would have real R1s and things, but mostly, or the people working there would have R1s, but yeah, and how much the company should be paying employees off of SBIRs who aren't actually developing research products is another thing. But
so the kind of reading between the lines, and maybe this is kind of where you're going, or kind of summarizes something like Philips in clinical EEG are probably mainly leaning at epilepsy and sleep, both of which have kind of canonical standard protocols using standard cheap simple devices. The EGI is not a standard cheap simple device.
Yeah.
And Philips kind of maybe didn't get the sense that they could really usefully or what you could say, like cost effectively or whatever, expand what people are doing in clinical epilepsy and clinical sleep. So they offloaded. But MagStim, well, which is maybe what you're going to get to, is like what's their plans?
And so I can only say that this was announced today.
Yeah. I just
So,
found I just found a website or a blog post or something. So actually,
but I see that there's actually now MagStim EGI. So you can find, you can find the press release and things. But I do think it's interesting. I thought it was interesting. I mean, you saw this with the Neureka
super
epilepsy.
interesting. Yeah, thanks for pointing it out. Yeah.
Say again?
Interesting. This is super interesting.
Yeah. I mean, so I definitely think it's interesting that. I mean, I love the TMS angle on this, right? And I think that TMS EEG is a really interesting, and particularly like neurophysics way of producing a, getting new measures. I think it's going to be, it's interesting. The Saint study that we've talked about previously from Stanford in terms of its comparison with ECT and yeah, like that's actually part of why I want to bring up CPT codes is that MagStim has a CPT code, right? And I see devices. I mean, we partly because we wanted to get one for research purposes, right? But we were actually being semi talked into, hey, well, you could start a clinic, and this was the joke, 20 years ago when I started like trying to learn MRI and going to these radiology, events and conferences and workshops. And, the joke amongst the radiologists was like, if you've got 200 patients that need MRI scans, then GE will give you a scanner, right? I mean, what they meant was like 200 a month, right? Like if you've got that kind of business, then you would qualify for a GE finance, loan, and you could buy a scanner and basically pay it off with your CPT codes. And the way that the chair of radiology at UCSF put it, an MRI prints money. Right? And this is his comparison to, what am I supposed to do with an MEG? But you see what I'm saying? Like MagStim's actually in a better position where they're able to actually get billing reimbursed. And again, some of this, I would love anybody's input in terms of how this works and other. I've only got the NHS and United States morass of healthcare issues.
Well, the MagStim is what they use in Toronto, at least in.
Yeah.
In
terms of research.
No, in the clinics.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
Is it a MagStim or is it what's the other big company?
Well,
I'm pretty sure I've seen MagStims in the clinic. Yeah, so it's a global market. It may not be an enormous market, but it's a pretty big global market as far as these things go.
Sure. We talked about Mag Ventures last week.
Mag Venture, yeah, right.
But do they sell whole systems or do they sell components? I wasn't sure.
Not exactly sure.
Because I mean, again, so in the United States, there's been a real explosion in TMS facilities available, and again, it's this thing where it's like you can sell a device if you know that you're going to be able to get reimbursed, and then it comes down to how many patients can you get, can you refer, right? So yeah, I think that MagStim is still, I mean, the thing with Philips is that they basically quite quickly moved out all the former EGI people. And so you didn't have anybody who could be writing SBIRs anymore, right? They were very much focused on trying to turn it into a Philips product. this is I don't have any more info, but we're gonna try and find out. And
yeah, I guess the question is whether they really consider this to be like a clinical product or a research device in their armory, because it's not essential, right? I mean, you don't need, most clinics doing TMS don't do EEG. A tiny fraction of them will do EEG at some point, and a tiny fraction will do MRIs.
Exactly. And but I will say, I mean, certainly, it was a big deal. I was there when we got our CE mark approval, and got our audit, and to be able to be a clinical device. And we've so they're certainly getting that aspect. Like, they weren't a research company, or they weren't a research only company. And so that positions them well. Yeah, we'll see.
It's great to see. I mean, I'm biased. I work on TMS EEG more modeling than empirical stuff. But I'm kind of very biased in that I'm super excited by this. But I
was super excited too.
The thing is that it's this torso localization, right? So that's like the big frontier for TMS EEG is getting good, recovering this wave of activity propagation that happens when you zap the brain with a big magnet, and doing that without and being confident that you've removed the artifacts, right? And it's still not a solved problem, right? There's these auditory artifacts. They look auditory evoked potentials. They look like TMS evoked potentials. You have to be like, people demonstrate, that you can completely mask, you can completely kind of give people earplugs and remove the kind of skull bone conducted thing. You can do enough to show that these are like, but it's just like the temporal structure of them. They just look like auditory ERPs, and because auditory ERPs are so global, right, then it's really tricky. So that just first up, that's what seems like one of the key advantages of using your fancy GI systems is these sensors going under the chin and all that. It's going to help with finding the sources.
You want to treat it like a real EM modeling problem. And so, again, falling back to the NIBS workshop that was just a couple weeks ago at Opit's lab in Minnesota. A lot of people focused on this. A lot of people focused on how to do the best sham TMS, and some of the great issues about trying to do that too. And I also, again, I love it from the psychiatry angle. There's a great recent paper in bioRxiv from, I know, Avi Peled at Technion, but Israeli group, again, all doing a lot of good neurophysics on the TMS EEG modeling. And so please let me know when there are TMS EEG conferences and or workshops, particularly focused ones.
So here's a question for you with your EGI expertise. So when MagStim acquire EGI, right? What are they? What is it? What is the technology? Is it the amplifiers? Is it the sensors? Like, why bother?
Well, so my guess would be just what you said, which is just the full stack, right? Which is just like a full stack, high density system that's easy to apply, doesn't require specialized training. It's like a hairnet application that gets you, gives you this extra window information in as like easy, no fuss as possible, right? And I think we both know that like there's no turn the crank analysis that you can do that will get you a billable like we both know that there's no clinical product that you can base on that quite yet, or there's nothing you can charge for with that.
No, I mean, not outside of epilepsy source localization, right? That would be the
and even then, we both are, like I'm just down the hill here from UCSF's MEG lab, which works very closely with neurosurgery and was basically kind of started alongside neurosurgery. They had one of the first, I forget, it was one of those like movable like 16 channel squids that yeah, I wish I find a picture of that. But you could basically move it around and point it at a small position. Neurosurgery was very interested to see whether you could do non-invasive treatment planning, right? And that certainly has been one of the big well, that was how somehow radiology was convinced into going in on that purchase and not being a completely research-driven device. But at the same time, like neurosurgeons still do invasive mapping while the
it's the same in Toronto. They have the MEG, and my understanding is they have the round tables, and they get all the information they can.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the kind of critical contribution of MEG is on a regular basis. I suspect it's not huge.
I would love to say, I'd love to say otherwise, but I still think of it as very much, it's an add-on to add, some prestige to a particular, neurosurgical unit. And that research still drives, if it wasn't for a bunch of cogneuro people also using it, then it would probably go away. But
so see if the same happens with the new EGI.
Yeah, well, so I mean, it's I still see a benefit in terms of merging with them. Like MagStim is a successful company. It's been around for a while, so it's got a business, right? It can go in, EGI can sort of be in support mode without it necessarily being a drag on the company. But hopefully it's one of the other things that EGI was a real leader on was EIT, right? Electrical impedance tomography, right? So better know your head by injecting current in, and it doesn't it's obviously different for TMS, but it still tells you something, especially about secondary currents and things like that, like what you will how's current going to flow once it is generated in that head. And
do you think the EIT technology the EGI had, it could be kind of scaled up to a TDCS type? Is that kind of miles away, or is that just?
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely in the same range. It's like if you again, like you need TDCS to get through the skull, right? So even though EGI was originally looking at skull EIT, right? It's there's nothing about its kind of protocol that really differs or is hard to change. And
so that's another thing you could imagine, possibly, just speculating, MagStim might be interested in doing is these new high density concurrent EEG transcranial electrical stimulation things, like what's the company with the Neurostar device? NeurotechX.
Oh yeah, NeurotechX. Yeah,
because maybe Maxim want to do electrical stim as well, and they could base it off of an EGI kind of scaffold.
Certainly, it's now something that is also billable.
TDCS.
Well, that's. I thought I saw that off of NeurotechX, and maybe. So I know that NeurotechX was trying to get permission. So this isn't. I don't think that you'll get insurance recharge, but I think what they got approval for was to at least charge people for TES. And so by FDA approval, I just mean that essentially it's more like they met basic safety requirements and being a substantially similar device to a previously approved product, which everybody points back to, like a stimulator from a neurosurgical stimulator from like the 1960s. And so just I want to, for those who aren't.
Is it cool if I ask real quick about the commercialization of a medical application? When I was at Noisebridge, there was a really fascinating researcher from Stanford that brought up a really cool application for plain old EEG. She was researching anesthesia during surgical procedures. And apparently the anesthesiologists during a surgical procedure need to balance two things: the level of wakefulness that you are experiencing and the amount of pain that you are experiencing. And the only metric that they have for both of those is your heart rate. So if your heart rate starts increasing during surgery, the anesthesiologist has to guess as to whether your wakefulness level is increasing, because that's one substance that they would give you more of, versus your pain level, which would give you a painkiller. The research she was doing was, hey, if we track their level of wakefulness through EEG, we can clarify which of the two is driving the heart rate response, so you know which appropriate medication to give. That seemed like they were using simple $3 plastic stick-on sensors combined with I think a 4-channel or a 6-channel board. It was really, really simple, but they were able to reliably determine the level of wakefulness. That always seemed like an incredible application to me if you could get it as a part of a regular surgery. Have any of you folks heard any discussion or anyone experimenting with using EEG during surgery to monitor wakefulness?
Yeah. So there's one device that I believe used to have a patent. I don't. So this kind of like bispectral index, was that a patented thing? So, not high density, although I'd love to see more of that. I think I've talked about this previously, like there are researchers in New Zealand. Well, so Dave Lively in Swinburne. I forget the name of the group in New Zealand, but done a lot of like propofol and other anesthetics, EEG anesthetics. They're very much focused on like, do we have good brain models for the changes in the EEG power spectrum? Right. Now, as I understand it, there was, so this would be a good question for an anesthesiologist, really.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can, yes, I believe it's, so check this Wikipedia. I'm gonna need
That's
to.
great.
I can maybe I could do. Okay, so she has previously said that she would only put me under if I got IRB approval.
Oh
But
dear.
maybe we can get her to come on and talk. So she's an anesthesiologist, long time at Oakland Children's, and she's moved to Cincinnati now.
Oh
And
wow.
her husband and I both worked at electrical geodesics. But yeah, it'd be great. So she practices and teaches, and it would be great if she would come on and talk about that particular issue. I might be able to convince her. And yeah, super interesting to hear. So I can't speak to the issues that you said about the pain and what was the other?
Wakefulness.
I mean, like what she would say as a
Right.
leading anesthesiologist in terms of like what measures she would use.
Right.
I will wait to hear from her. This I know. Yeah. Okay. So Biz was introduced. So I'm just reading from the Wikipedia here. By Aspect Medical Systems in 1994 as a novel measure of the level of consciousness. So, but I always loved this just because, they basically still didn't know why it worked, or, even if it did, right? and we were fully aware of, all the great neurophysics modeling of EEG spectra, anesthesia, EEG spectra.
Right.
So I'd love to have her talk, as well as, point you, or it doesn't speak to the question of, wakefulness, but I think the most recent papers on anesthesia modeling are great and are super relevant if you want to read any of the psychedelics modeling that's going on right now by, Gustavo Deco and Robin Carhart Harris and others. I mean, Robin's mostly using,
Right.
EEG modelers that work with David Lively.
It's hot.
There's good people that like we should be aware of the anesthesia modeling to understand the the kind of psychotropics modeling.
Yeah, that's wonderful. No, it's a really interesting topic, and this is a fascinating wiki link. I'll definitely check it out.
Okay, so I mean that's the one device I know of, and I'd love to hear more. And I'll see if we can get Nicolette to come on. And I think we she's
that would be fascinating. Yeah.
busy. It would be awesome. And it was the one, the last meeting at McGill. They were kind of offering collaborations to people, and the most interesting ones were really the anesthesiologists who were like, we don't know why any of the stuff we do works. Can we work on that? And
Yeah, a little more confidence would be nice.
well, they put it much better than but
No. I mean, confidence in what we're measuring, not that they should assert empty confidence, but like if they could be more comfortable with the metrics, it would be great.
yeah, I mean, I think they were really saying like we still don't know what the method of action of anesthesia. Yeah, I mean, I saw that made a lot of rounds like about a month ago. This like somehow anesthetics act on fat cells or on fat, like it's doing some sort of fat dissolving, which again, like I kind of treated it like when you see these, this is the mechanism behind schizophrenia kind of papers, where it's just like, yeah, it's you got to put stuff in the abstract to get people to read things.
Yeah.
But yeah, super interesting. Would love, I was so this is a great segue into Kalar Kakin's not talk, but Kalar joined us last week or this week at Paris meetup. So he's the Neurolib developer at the Bernstein Center for Computational Neuroscience in Berlin. And he's a really nice guy. We had a great long conversation, and he's definitely coming back to do a tutorial using, so he's going to do a presentation of Neurolib plus a collab tutorial that he's really wanted to make sure that it was ready before he joined us. But had a really nice discussion with him on Monday, and he's been mostly modeling sleep. And I kind of mentioned this to him in the sense that, like, he just, so far his models are all cortical, and in order to model sleep, he had to add the thalamus. And so I was kind of asking him about, because I had been asking, well, what, like, do you do whole brain modeling, or do you just do, just is it cortical? And right. And so we got into some of these discussions and then it was like, well, can you model sleep? Can you model anesthesia? Right? Because these are if for someone who's modeling EEG spectrum, right. These are really great state changes that are obviously physiologically based, and we know a lot about them in animals and things like that. But animals and humans, and yeah, so it was great that he could add that. He said, like, anesthesia would be another whole thing, and I'd love to get him talking with, or I'd love to see his take on some of the Dave Lively papers, and again, like, I think it's probably easier for us to get approval to do work on psychedelics than it is to actually put people under. But I think anyway, so I think it's really cool that you're seeing all this interest in psychedelics, because there's some really good EEG modelers that are working on it, in the sense of people who are working with David Lively or Morton Kringlebeck, and he's not done any EEG, but obviously what they've been doing with Gustavo Deco and LSD, it's you could ask people about their pain levels when they're taking these drugs too.
Yes.
and I bet you get
what's the goal of these studies? I mean, you can't just say we're going to give it to them and see what happens, but
I think
so
that's what they're doing.
Some type of focus, and I guess pain.
Can't you though?
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Like the Large Hadron Collider, they just turn it on, and eventually we'll figure out what all it does.
Well, I can show you some papers where it's like they're just looking at the EEG.
But I think, like you were saying, it's hard enough just to get the studies going. So if they can get recordings, eventually, hopefully, we can figure it out if they standardize it.
Yeah, find the state that matches the.
Just 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we're going to look at people and just do classification on are they under the influence of X, I mean, that one sounds pretty easy to me.
Yeah, I don't think you need any brain signal for that one.
I mean, has that been done with alcohol? Does anybody know?
No, but there was wasn't there a study about that for marijuana recently, trying to detect marijuana intoxication using EEG signals? I think it was posted in the Slack channel.
I think that one I saw. Yeah.
I love that. So it's it's a real company working on that, and again, like more people who are doing model-based EEG analysis, I think the better. I think it was the Robin Carhart Harris DMT paper with that, like the EEG DMT. I thought was a great example, Richard, though, of just like there was nothing except like.
About how many channels did they get?
So they were pretty much just doing. I'll find the paper in a second, but they were pretty much just doing like single channel recording. I think they had more
Just
channels. Maybe they had some scalp topographies, but like there wasn't much to it. But it was
That's a real extreme substance, by the way.
It's the co-author is the person who worked with Chris Singh on the GABA gamma stuff. It's a very long South Asian name. He was at Cardiff. Muthukumar Swami. Sorry, here, let me. Anyway, you can see from this paper that he did this analysis. Yeah, Muthukumar Swami. And
Awesome. I'll look at this later. Thank you.
yeah, it's I'm just gonna just get the.
Although
they've got,
I wanted to do the authentic peyote experience in an indigenous community. I think Sting did that, among others. There's a little Netflix documentary.
Well, I find all of this EEG modeling fascinating. People take substances that they know affect their performance, whether it's basic stuff like green tea and caffeine, which are very widely used and considered very mild. But I'm also really fascinated by the amphetamine-based stimulants, not on a personal level, but from the getting data on it, because it would be interesting to see like Adderall versus Ritalin versus, well, I'm certainly not advocating, meth or anything like that, but given that there's a variety of stimulants that people certainly experience very different cognition during, it'd be fascinating to see some models and see how the different substances change, brain state.
Yeah. So here's their.
There are so many
subjective. Their subjective experience. I don't know if you can read these things. I experienced a different reality or dimension. I saw geometric patterns.
Yeah.
And then you can see these, I'm going to guess EEG lab topo plots, but these are obviously pretty low channel.
So there's not a flurry of activity like per se with a seizure, because I mean, everybody, they're obligated to say something if doing these drugs produces seizure-like behavior.
Oh no! There's no seizure-like behavior this at all. if anything, I thought one of the other kind of recent Carhart Harris papers that was really funny there was a recent LSD paper where they basically did old versus young. So, but it was really just to show that, like, I mean, the conclusions of it was just like nothing bad happened at all to the young people or the old people. Like that, it was that kind of paper. Like it had been demonized for so long that they kind of had to do a study to show that, like, nobody died. no, nothing bad happened. We just dosed a bunch of 70-year-olds. And
if it would have shown otherwise, I'm sure congressmen and women would have been jumping out of their chairs to.
But we know it wouldn't. I mean, it's like it's like one of the safest drugs, and one of the reasons I keep bringing this up is that, like, when all the drug companies got out of pharma, I mean, out of psychiatry, one of the reasons that you're seeing all these drugs come in to be used is that we know that they are safe and we know that they are psychoactive. Right. And so it's like it's getting used for everything just because you don't have to do any drug development. Right. It's you can just start to look at the effects, and some companies are just figuring out how to, say, patent the synthetic process.
So I guess the holy grail for psychonauts would be a series of studies that just say it's not only safe, it's incredibly helpful.
Right. Which so that's what,
I mean, one isn't enough. It's got to be like a trickle effect or something.
Sure. And that's what's coupled, that's what's coupled with this big push that, that Tim Ferriss and others are making, right? Which is like there's a big medical research push. There's a big safety push. And then there's a big, treatment, and like this is the benefit of it, right? Like beyond just recreational use, but like taking control, not only
a combo of the TMS type of treatment with that, with a very safe antidepressant, and then you wouldn't have to try 5 antidepressants to figure out which one you need to keep.
Right. Well, yeah. So certainly, the Stanford group wants to collect your EEG to be able to tell you which antidepressant that you should be taking, right? So they want to predict your treatment response on the basis of EEG, potentially.
I'm pretty sure Watson could figure that out if you have enough subjects.
Well, again, like
I have a hunch Watson already has a cancer solution too. Oh, I think Pythonot wants to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll let's just make sure that people have the data so that they can tell. Anyway, some good modeling that was done on this. I would still say yeah, we've there's lots of good modeling on anesthesia that I'd love to cover, and I'll definitely ask. I'm going to use this as a great intro to ask Nicolette to come and talk to us about that.
I definitely think I heard my name called a minute ago, but like as someone who used to take Ritalin, Lexapro, Strattera, all of those different types of things when I was younger, I definitely think a long dang it, this. Why was I muted? Huh. That was weird.
Long-term effects.
Oh, sorry. I was seeing. I have this like static in mind, and I thought I was muting you from myself personally to see if this coming for you.
Okay. Sorry. But the long-term effects of how it works, because like for me, over time, different types of drugs didn't work as well for the ADD, ADHD. And then there's also the importance of like some of these have different types of side effects psychologically. I remember when I was young, I actually had a fear of nothing. Like every day for an hour, I'd just be scared, not of anything, just scared.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a side effect of
Yeah.
stimulant. I mean, it could be.
I
Yeah.
think that was back when I took Adderall, and that was before I had any antidepressants, I think. But things like that, if there was long-term EG studies of how people process it, do they get attuned to that stimulation? And like for me at this point, I doubt I could tell the difference between a placebo and one of the actual drugs, because I just learned how to change my focus, so that things like ADHD don't distract me too far. But the importance of actually understanding in young and old people these different modalities could be very useful. And also with like psychedelic drugs like that report was showing, there are so many different uses for figuring out how different drugs interact with different people. Yeah, I think it could be very interesting, and I also think the study that person at Noisebridge was talking about, I remember that talk about using it during anesthesia. Like that, I think is really cool. Like the different cognitive like load that you have in different amounts of wakefulness under different drugs. Like there are so many things that affect how our brain processes things, and we don't actually have studies on most things. Like how does, like, if we're in a car driving very fast, how does our cognitive load shift? Like, there's been studies done about how our eyesight kind of changes, but that is due to our brain doing different things, but we don't know what those things are. So there is so much possible research. It's very exciting.
I certainly love the idea of us, of making it so that it's much easier to have this, you know, kind of like daily sense of your EEG spectra and see what, if anything, is causing that to shift. Not everything, you know, a lot of those drugs have very specific action, and it's not clear that you would see, you know, the big kind of peaks of your EEG spectra, they might not shift. You know, they might be, as a lot of studies have shown, they might be very you know, very robust over time. But data would help. Yeah, we'll hopefully get to talking about my spectrogram. And yes, definitely. So, well, we'd love to, yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about with the Muse. And you can upload data to Open Humans. So we will talk about that. That's a perfect segue, John, for checking in with you about EG notebooks. And
stuff's happening, but it's we're in the throes of things. I'm in the thick of debugging brain flow errors right
Oh,
now.
Okay.
And communicating with Jaden on this.
Okay.
So yeah, that kind of thing. I don't know if anyone has successfully got BrainFlow working with an OpenBCI board on Windows. Anyone on the call has done that before?
Yes, it works.
Yes. Okay.
So y'all are using Python, and it's incredibly stable. It is working in the Java binding, and also I might have tested BrainFlow C++ directly too.
Did
Right.
you see that what I just sent you about how do you
does on
actively,
Windows.
Yeah.
On Windows.
Yeah, I just tried that. So it's on it's picked up serial port COM3.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that should.
All of the other things are like IP port 0, IP protocol 0.
Yeah, it doesn't need those because you're not using the Wi-Fi board.
Right.
So that should be the right serial port, but I can double check and see.
So there's an OpenBCI BrainFlow repo. Okay, where should I look to kind of find an easy test of this? I found something in the BrainFlow documentation, which is like a bunch of examples of the APIs, and it's 3 or 4 lines.
Knowing what COM port to use.
I'm trying to figure out. So I'm getting this error. The error is. Sorry, one sec. Error is unable to open port. Error 2. BrainFlow error 2. Unable to prepare streaming session. So it's when you do board.prepare session.
Yes. Might be the wrong port.
Okay.
It says in BrainFlow docs that it needs COM3.
Yeah, but that number is different depending on how many serial ports you have. John, you can get the GUI 5.0 from openbci.com/downloads.
Yeah,
and
I got
it'll
that.
tell you the name of it'll tell you which COM port it's on in the little list in the radio config tool.
Wonderful. Okay. I can fire that up and check that out.
It doesn't default like it does on Linux? Because on Linux, it always defaults to TTY USB 0.
Yes. I'm quite familiar with this, actually.
Okay.
That's very helpful.
Java library that I could just ask for the name of the product, and that little dongle is very specific name. So I was like, okay, it works on all platforms.
So for those that are not familiar, I dropped the BrainFlow docs into the chat, and this is an API that is I think was originally developed for OpenBCI, right? Or sort of.
You wanted to make something that was quote unquote board agnostic, and that's part of Andre's thing.
Gotcha.
It helps within OpenBCI, and then later, if he wants to add other companies, he can.
Good, cool. I mean,
but it is sponsored by OpenBCI at the current.
That's what I and it's too bad Jackie didn't come back. I don't know if you remember last week the woman who joined us and brought up on Slack the GTech summer school that is also going on this week. I just wanted to point out that BrainFlow also supports the Unicorn board, which is GTech's low cost solution. And I was, there was so much going on this week. I know that the GTech summer school had tremendous showing. Did anybody catch Yark talking? will all be on YouTube.
Sorry, the whole GTech school will be on YouTube?
I believe so.
Okay, awesome.
I let me check. Let me get the links to see if we've got anything tomorrow. I want to say that just because GTech's always been so good about putting up YouTube, but
Yeah, they posted their spring school, so I feel like they probably will again.
I feel like they will. I mean, so here's the summer school link, and they've had oh. I see lots of links to their webinars, but I don't see links to the let me check their YouTube channel. And just while we're looking at BrainFlow and GTech things, if anybody is on for the first time and would like to introduce themselves, please do. I'm also curious of how I would pronounce AE when it is merged. I feel like I saw this recently with Elon Musk's child.
I believe it's AI, technically.
Oh, is it AI?
I think that's what they said it was, but I don't know how much I believe them.
Okay. GTech does have a lot of videos, but from a long time ago. I mean, they he's had a great crew of people presenting, and some really interesting hackathon, kind of like projects or possible projects. I know Jackie was had posted this on Slack and had said she was interested. I'd love to hear if anybody did join in, and let me just see what I mean, again, like, I think GTech is really interesting company in that they do make a unicorn device, but I know them from more invasive conferences, and where they are demoing their products, and this is being used by neurosurgeons to do recordings too, and and I know they've also, I mean, they've been around so long, they've also got good links with groups that are doing a lot of BCI and other medical you know, like these areas like coma patients and ALS patients, and they've got a lot of good research applications. It would be, I mean, I would definitely like to see if somebody using BrainFlow with their device too. Anyway, I also dropped in the link for the so the virtual boot camp of the ERP lab is up above. So you can, just so that you know, that they do make all their scripts and slides available, and video recordings, and they're saying that only available only until July 8th. I don't. That seems like the reverse of what I like. I'm not sure what's going to happen to them July 9th, but they are there, and you know what. Why I was particularly interested was that they were making data available, and I didn't. Let me just see if where's the GTech. So I don't think any of the. I mean, I saw that IEEE Brain was sponsoring the hackathon, and who does this Brain IO? You know, spelt like the kids do it.
People?
Is that just a GTech thing? Oh, okay. Well, but they've got Samara, so
Something going on in Toronto 2020
oh,
on that website. News to me. Cool. October.
huh?
Probably
Well,
won't happen.
It's the same. I mean, BCI Samara is also October. Okay, so I wonder if this is like co-done with IEEE Brain, just because like this is, or maybe that's what GTech's focused on, is that they're following IEEE conferences, because this is Toronto's Match Systems Man and Cybernetics Society. Anyway, I would be interested to know. They sponsor a lot of good stuff, and yeah, okay. It is organized by GTech. Okay. Oop. And they have a website, or they have a YouTube. As so, what I don't know is if they make any, if they make any large data sets available. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about ERP Core was that this is 40 subjects and 7 ERP tasks, where they're giving you the data from those subjects. They're using a a high density system, but they're using like a research / clinical EEG system to collect data, but then treating it very much like an ERP analysis, in the sense of focusing on a channel that shows the biggest difference between conditions, and then focusing on, in the paper, they're focused on just straight difference waves. But what you get if you go through their decoding is that the kind of turning it into a multivariate classification problem is actually a really interesting way of processing this as well. And that leads into, some of the now looking across tasks, it would be doing something somewhat akin to MOAB. Not that you're so much focused on trying to find the same effects, in the sense like MOAB was mostly collecting motor imagery data sets, right? So even though you were dealing with differences in terms of the data collection, in terms of the channel positions potentially and things like that, you were still usually doing a 2 or 4 classification problem of real and imagined movement. And in this case, it's a really great way to get some practical experience with the kind of ERP studies that are described in Steve Luck's book. And these are very reliable paradigms. They made presentation. I've got my Windows system to run presentation that they've presentation scripts that they've got for these 7 tasks. And these would be, they've already said that they'd love to see PsychoPi versions of these.
So I've been working on this while we were on the call, and Abby and everybody else, there's if you want to take a sneak peek at where we're at with the landing page, it's going to live at OpenBCI lab or lab.openbci if it gets any bigger. So it's going to be similar to the Neureka site, but we're gonna make it our own. It just needs some graphics. I don't know if there's anybody here that might want to help with graphics for the summer challenge.
What kind of material would be good? I mean, if it's like graphics that involve, like EEG.
So there's the website. They did a pretty good job on their website, and I just actually used it about an hour or 2 ago to make sure it looks good on mobile, the way they did their bootstrap columns and things. But most of the information is there, but in the style, we already have the OpenBCI blue, but mixing the logos and that you can see on that web page, there's at least one graphic every row. And like little little trophies, a little golden trophy, and it says first place and everything. So, but Abby is helping with the content. She's on this call right now. I'm helping with getting it on the website and doing Bootstrap and whatnot, and CSS.
Looking good.
Yeah, I think this looks great. Are you going to include the summaries of each 4 phases I wrote, or do you think that that'll be a maybe added in later?
It's really super tiny. It says, here are some details on the phases. And I'm going to put 4 little images there. That was the So that part is really small now. And then at the bottom, Abigail wanted to do, it says like phase 1 and then have little drop downs. And I think I can do that with Bootstrap, but for now it's just there.
Yeah, I think this looks great as well.
And instead of a full width, like on the OpenBCI website, it's a full width thing. I went with the half and half because it ends up playing better for our mobile users.
Yeah, this looks great. And of course, I'm glad you took artistic license for in some places because I'm not really married to any of the ideas whatsoever.
Yeah, but
This looks awesome.
that top image that everybody sees, that needs to, I'd like that to have the NTX logo, the IEEE logo, and OpenBCI's logo right close together. And then we really don't need to do any more branding past that because it's going to be about the collaboration. But yep. Who is AE? Who said they might like to help?
Would you mind introducing yourself, or love to have you?
I'm actually going to run. I have a meeting in the morning, so I need to go to bed kind of soon, but it's been great talking to you guys all. And as per usual, if anyone's interested in joining the diversity chat tomorrow, feel free to hop in that Slack channel, and I'll post the link to it. It's going to be at 2 p.m. EST tomorrow.
Sounds great, Abby.
See you tomorrow, Abby.
Okay.
Take
All
care.
right.
Good night, guys. See you tomorrow. Take care.
Anyways, I'm just happy I got everything to be centered vertically. That was taking me forever. Like some places said you should do like a translate or something like that, but what did I end up doing? Justify content to the center, I think. Something with the flex direction.
Richard, thanks for the pointer with the OpenBCI GUI. That fixed my problem.
Yeah, this is one of the things we're designing the GUI going forward, because in the past people felt like it needs to do everything, it needs to have all these features, and now we're like, what does it need to do though?
But John, do I need to change anything in the repo then, or is it something on your end?
I'm just putting in a commit now to allow the serial port to be supplied as an argument, and then that'll kind of solve it for now.
Okay, cool.
I don't know. This is an example of one of the things that is, why we need to distribute and get people to check is like how often is the default serial port on Windows COM3 and how often is it COM5, right? So me it's COM5, but the documentation says COM3, and that was the default one that you had. So ultimately we probably want to do some kind of smart detection thing if it's possible.
Right, like a cycle through just COM ports until...
If there's a way of testing, maybe we could have like a kind of catch error thing after we do the initial init brain flow, and something like that.
Can I tell you how we do it in the GUI? We can do the little radio config button status. I use just processing serial port. So default serial port library, I guess Python has one of those. We write a little, couple of like 2 or 3 bytes, and then we wait for a success code.
Okay.
If you really want to do that, we could dig into that offline. But,
so you list through a bunch of port codes and just see which one works.
One, and then the user selects it and clicks status, and it sends the little code. And that doesn't even go through BrainFlow; it just does it straight in serial.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be overkill. I guess it depends how many possible options there are. But this is we can come back to this. I'm going to put in this option right now just to let you add it manually, and then that'll get around the crash at least, and then we can kind of return to cleaning that up at a later point if we want to make it, idiot proof, foolproof.
Yeah, sounds good.
Because I think the COM port also has a bearing on using the ganglion, the 4-channel option.
So in what way?
You have to specify it, I believe.
Okay.
Maybe not. I don't know. I think you do.
So for those who aren't working on BrainFlow, I just dropped in a link for the microdraw view of all the OHBM posters, and now I think I need to help my daughter in the bathroom. Just one sec.
This thing is the best.
What? What is this?
This is so just a bit of like context. So there's this conference HBM at the moment, and they, we talked about this last time. Like they have this platform that things are being organized through. But one of the kind of hilarious things is that over the course of literally like 4 days or however long it's been on, there's been like 5 or 10 like little kind of tools that various hacker people have put together that have like dramatically improved the infrastructure that the whatever the company was that they engaged to produce to host the to do the hosting. So this is like one example. This is just something that some guys in Paris they put together, and it's like a poster viewing tool.
Yeah.
So
But you can't search it though.
Yeah.
They've got other tools, and so this is just one. This which is it was like a mashup of a bunch of people collaborating all at home, all distributed, and this was one in particular. Let me so if we just follow stuff coming out from Brainweb, and so July 15th will be the Brainweb. Well, here let me just drop in. This is so the Paris group, or Roberto Toro at the Institut Pasteur is one of the principals behind Brainweb, and they also use Jitsi. So you can see the anyway their next hangout is July 15th, and you can also see some of the other projects. But I loved the view that told you who was standing at a poster in a Jitsi room. Look, this is. Okay, I mean, so if I click on one of these that we get, anyway, you can yeah. So next Brainweb event, July 15th, and usually very image processing focused. Roberto has a great it's called the Brain Catalog, isn't it, John? That's just like multiple many species of creatures with their MRIs, and
so Roberto's like a surfaces geek, brain surface folding and brain brain development. So that's one of the main things that he's into, and he does a bunch of stuff that's kind of really innovative technical image processing stuff, but also they do a lot of comparative anatomy. So they have this this database that is like samples from museums of hundreds of species. It's like, this is the, and they have this like Twitter account that tweets out like, this is the brain of a black rhinoceros. This is the brain of a, black-footed ferret. This is the brain, take your pick. And they have a lot.
Yep.
And they've got like, reasonably high quality MRIs, and you can 3D print ones. In fact, I think the last time I saw Katya, she had like a necklace of a slow loris brain 3D printed.
Where is this?
Yeah. So, Katya, who you're? I forget her last name exactly, but yeah, she's at Max Planck Frankfurt. Is that right? Anyway, yeah, I've seen her. She's seen her last saw her at MozFest, and where they're doing a lot of the open science presentations. And what were we doing?
She was a Mozilla fellow for a year, right?
Yeah,
one of the open science fellow.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember what she was leading us through that particular time, but yeah, you can, because or certainly a lot of us use software to fit surfaces to the anatomy of those MRIs, and once you do that, you've got things very easily importable into 3D printing software. And certainly that was like that was a hot thing to do when 3D printers were very new, was that you could get out your particular brain and print it out. But you could also, this was and has been, this has been really used to good effect in both all sorts of medical disciplines, but also neurosurgery, in that you can create a 3D model of the problem that you've got to face and work with it, because they're doing a lot of planning to how to this is all under what they call pre-surgical planning, and when it's brain surgery, it's very delicate. Anyway, these were some of the. So they also had some open science talks this week on a very interesting, a great panel on containers that David Kennedy ran. David runs the great resource that everybody calls NeurotechX, which is not phonetic, but I'm posting here. But it was great. So it was like people talking about the pros and cons of containers and some strong opinions, and then Gail came and dropped some real opinions.
So what, I missed that one.
Did you
turn up and hear what the strong opinions were, because they said like pros and cons?
Oh man, I wish I could. I mean, so at a certain point, some of the comments just went into the chat as opposed to things that people were saying. What they were saying out loud, and then David started reading the chat. I forget. Anyway, these are luckily on YouTube. I don't know if David's going to release the raw footage. I recommend watching them. I'm not going to be able to do it justice. Yeah, but very good. I mean, mostly things like containers although being a a good practical approach to things, still supports a certain laziness of programming and so it's like couldn't we all just use NeuroDebian and follow Debian practices? Or if I may say, like, if you don't want to go that way, there's always Fedora.
I wanted to ask you about this because I was looking through the CNS abstracts.
Yeah.
And I happened to see NeuroFedora.
Yeah. Well, so it's
Fedora.
So it's the same thing, right? I mean, but so NeuroFedora was very much like, we need to get ahead of Red Hat, right? So in the sense that like if we put things in Fedora, then when Red Hat Enterprise comes out, then we'll be able to have stuff in there that we actually want, or we'll have newer versions, or things like that. Like if you're complaining, if you've ever complained about Red Hat and CentOS, then get interested in Fedora, because that's what Fedora Project's for. It's a great place to test things out. It's a great place to use the latest and greatest of both the kernel and of Python and potentially other things depending on what your technology interest is. But we look at it as mainly two things, which is following best practices in terms of software engineering for the entire for your entire Linux system, and using pretty much the cutting release of Python. And because basically machine learning and data science is built on Python these days, right? So the great thing being that, like, yeah, a lot of what you see in NeuroDebian is Python packages. And a lot of NeuroFedora is Python too, in the sense that like a lot of these can be installed with PyPy. It's really things like, it's making sure that things like Neuron, I mean, it so far has a bit of a computational neuroscience focus. And some of that's just because Ankur Sinha, who's really been leading it since 2018, is more focused on the computational neuroscience tools. But what I want to do for next year's HVM is like for NeuroFedora, is like having all the ITK based tools. So there's ants, for instance, right? So a lot of people in our in MRI neuroimaging used this nonlinear registration toolkit called ANTS, and it is a project built on ITK, which is available from Kitware, and that has a lot of government support. These are both very much funded by grants, but produce awesome tools, awesome software. You could probably, I've got a list of like 10 packages that you built on Insight Toolkit, and provides a wide range of sophisticated image processing and computational modeling for MRI data.
So Morgan, are most computers that are in the control room of a huge imaging, you're talking about serious imaging, MRIs, CAT scans, and that type of thing?
But just so you know, in one of those really expensive imaging suites, that Siemens scanner is being run by a Windows NT box. Just so you know.
In like a server room, and then they've got a control computer that allows them to
No,
just.
no, the control computer is the Windows box.
It is okay.
Yeah.
But
Now,
you're talking about
I will say GE. You know, I like G. So radiology at UCSF is GE. You know, and even though the Neuroscience Imaging Center uses Siemens, they were all GE. You know, they're like and to some degree, hospital radiology people don't really care about you know, the same things as neuroimagers, right? Anyway, GE uses Linux.
Oh, okay.
Uses Red Hat, and so
So what
yes,
type of places
if
will
we-
be using a custom distribution of what you said, Neuro Fedora?
So NeuroFedora is so we're now an official Fedora project labs in that we have our own ISO that's distributed by Fedora that contains all the, you know, precompiled package tools that NeuroFedora currently has. That's our Comp Neuro lab. Now we're going to add, you know, the full neuroimaging, and so, you know, next year HBM, what we'll have is all the neuroimaging tools, and
But is this installed like in a computer lab in the next room, and then this whatever y'all are using as a scanner, is gonna use whatever you get with that?
right. So you know.
Oh, okay.
Again, like I can tell you what I was interested to have it available from the scanner console,
Oh,
right? So, but that's it's a semi research thing. So the 7 Tesla magnet at UCSF in radiology is kind of like co-managed with GE, right? So there's a, you know, they've got a long old relationship. And it's very much focused on brain cancer, and it's very much focused on spectroscopy. So for a long time, we had some custom scanners in terms of like long bores and things like that. That just, you know, it was again, it was like a bunch of features that were very much focused on spectroscopy, and not necessarily brain. So they're doing prostate and brain. And I say that just because, you know, like there was a time when some of the kind of famous neuroimaging places had like head only scanners. Like I know Oregon had one. University of Oregon had one. So sorry, I'm getting into the weeds in terms of neuroimaging. Yeah, there's some really great things that if you had, you know, if you were able to look at the real-time data from the scanner, you know, you could do some really cool things, right? So a lot of like people would love to do neurofeedback with fMRI, for instance, or, you know, get certainly one of the things that we wanted to do was to be able to, it was like, how quickly can we process? We want to be able to collect, you know, anatomical scans. Then we want to process and label them and create ROIs that then you then actually want to be able to, in kind of like setting up the next scan, you need to do some very complicated processing. And spectroscopy is one of those things. So anyway, it's typically you've got those things on a second computer, not the scanner console. Like the scanner console is typically a computer that you're not even allowed to plug in a USB device anymore, right? For good reason. You know, the fact that like if you turn off a Siemens system, you see, you know, a Windows boots, you know, boot screen is just frightening. But anyway, we were using yeah, or GE was using like Red Hat 6 at the time, or that was pretty new. Like we were, yeah. So, and then Oxford and MGH, but the place that builds FSL software and the place that builds FreeSurfer software both are big CentOS sites. So that was our other reason to focus on Fedora. It was like either everybody joins NeuroDebian, which is still like I'm talking to you on on Ubuntu with NeuroDebian.
So this is what I was going to ask is like, what, are you trying to do exactly the same thing as NeuroDebian, or you said one or two things that are kind of motivations for preferring to do the Fedora route, but are you essentially just like going to reproduce NeuroDebian on Fedora and then say, hey, this is better?
Well, so again, it's like if your motivation is to get things into Red Hat and Red Hat CentOS, right? Then focus on Fedora, right? As opposed to focusing on Debian. So I think I like the fact that Jarek and Michael say like, hey, we don't really, Ubuntu is not our main reason for doing this. Like, they are Debian developers, right? And there's, yeah. So it was, let's add what we can, make an extra, make it also just very easy to add things that couldn't be added into Debian. So I mean, our biggest problem right now is that nobody's building FSL on their own. I don't know if you've noticed that, but it's like, so one of the things that was actually talked about in the open science room. Sorry, it's not 8 o'clock yet. Okay, so people talked about like, hey, with NeuroDebian, I can't get them the most recent version of FSL, right? And I think I know why, which is that like when you download the source code, download the source code version, like you don't have everything. It's not available as a prepackaged super build. And what I mean by a super build is like it's got all the external libraries all contained within it, and it will build those, and you don't have to rely on system libs, and you don't have to rely on kind of like configuring your build for a system, right? Like FSL no longer has a super build version, and I take it, but now what they do produce, they make a version available for Ubuntu now, right? And I think that that Jarek and Michael have realized that like they could spend all their time doing the things that the software engineering team at FIMRIB aren't doing, or they could just use, people could just use the other, the tarball from FIMRIB. FreeSurfer currently, so I've tested 7.1.0 on, they make an RPM available now, and for Red Hat 8. So that's super progress in the sense that like Red Hat 8 was, somewhat recently released, and now we got a version that you can, install just like any other package. You still have to drop in a license file. But anyway, it was also super easy to add and install on Fedora, and at least we're compatible with all the package names, so it will install all the necessary packages you need. The only things that don't work, none of the TK tools will work, because they're still hard coded for particular paths on MGH's on Martineau Center paths for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, I'd be quite happy if we were just a NeuroDebian using Fedora base. You know, and that kept on feeding, you know, those particular tools, you know, that made what it really comes down to is like, how up to date is our VTK and our ITK and all the derivative tools, or all the tools that build on top of those. So, you know, those are very widely used by Montreal. You know, they're very widely used by McGill. They're very widely used by you know, ANTS. There's MITK, Slicer, and then there's what's this, Snap. There's some really great, you know, there's some great just MRI viewers. There's, you know, simple ITK. There's, you know, so you know, there's things that that actually, you know, now basically add ITK functionality to Python. And so, you know, what I'm seeing now is like seeing ITK and Slicer and things like that be available within a Jupyter notebook. You know, and anything to get rid of Slicer's interface. and you know, and I think yeah, and so I haven't checked on, you know, AFNI would be super. I've been a long time packager of AFNI for both you know, like Mac ports as well as Think Mac ports, and you know, most I didn't add it for Brew, but I'd kind of moved off of Mac by the time Brew came around. I don't know if anybody uses Macs, but
You've been in this packaging game for a while then.
yes, yeah. Well, so it was partly to just support our own users. Like it was like, why come up with your own packaging, or you know, why not just do it? I loved. I mean, Think was basically Debian packaging on Mac, right? It wasn't really adding. You know, it wasn't something new. You know, Brew makes me actually use Ruby, which, you know, I'd previously avoided. Anyway, it's but I'm glad you saw it, and you know, there's, you know, NeuroFedora is particularly strong in computational neuroscience tools, and we would love, yeah, love to see people use it. It's definitely set up so that it be a very easy, like, you know, people can install it from a USB stick and run it. You know, I mean, they can just use it live, or you can, you know, image a bunch of systems with our ISO, and everything's pre-installed and is mostly tested.
I do find myself kind of running up against this, and I don't necessarily understand this at a hugely deep level, or indeed want to particularly engage with it at a hugely deep level. But you've got the Python packaging tools, you know, yeah. Conda and pip, yeah. And then you've got your you know, principally Linux OS packaging tools, and they kind of like, they definitely overlap. But often, you know, I want Conda especially, like they do a good job of compiling a lot of C libraries. Yeah. And they seem to, and it seems to work better getting Conda to compile the C libraries than trying to install them with APT, or just generally trying to kind of natively have them on the operating system. So whenever, you know, the more that Conda is kind of taking charge of building up a bunch of base C libraries, the better. And I don't know from a packaging perspective if that's like creep or if that's like, you know, a bad thing, or is this is like an issue within the community?
I would love, you know, I mean, somebody like Simon would be able to say more in terms of, you know, the previous attempts to, I mean, everybody knows that PIP was already kind of like a Band-Aid, or, you know, like it wasn't, well, it's a big question for us in terms of like, how important is it to package, you know, RPM package something that is already pip installable, right? And if it's just pure Python, then I'd say, you know, it's not that important. But as you know, there's like a lot of things that that are really like C codes with Python wrapper, and that was as well as, like, you know, again, like, it's funny because it's like we can't distribute FSL or FreeServer, right? But I'd like to have a bunch of packages available that only work if those are installed, right? Or, you know, certainly, like, I want a bunch of tools that work on output from FSL and FreeServer. And so, yeah, I'm really interested for Kalar. So I was pronouncing it Kaglar, but it's like somehow the G is silent. So it's Kalar Kakan, who's the Neurolib developer, was saying that he's using Numba currently. And, you know, and this is, you know, like Numba, Jax, and Julia, like, are all these attempts to kind of get away from having this split, or, you know, having a bunch of computational C++ codes in the back and C++ code, and then having wrappers, and yeah, maybe we won't need it. You know, but I think you've got really good people behind Anaconda, and, like, I personally really love, you know, NumFocus and all the projects that they support. Like, I would just, you know, I know that then some people just don't, you know, it's an added layer. Yeah. So, Simon, are you on? I mean, does everybody remember, you know, the older Python packaging tools?
So Jax, I discovered Jax the other day. I was like using Autograd, or somewhat playing around with some of Autograd's, some of the model fitting, you know, optimization stuff in Autograd. And there's this big sign on the Autograd repo, which is like, we're not developing this anymore. We're doing Jax.
Yeah.
Oh, check out Jax.
Yeah.
Which is like Autograd, but with, yeah. And so like you're saying, so it's like, it's doing JIT type stuff.
Yeah.
In a way, like similar to Numba.
Yeah. And you know, and this is the thing, right? It's like everybody's basically looking for you know, auto differentiation, right? and you know, so you got pirates and things like that, where it's like they're using TensorFlow, not really for TensorFlow, right? But they're just, you know, but it's because it includes these, you know, these particular numerical operations. I mean, I feel like we could all be using like Stan in the back end, and, or, you know, or certainly benefiting from their their engineering as well, right? And you know, I think it was Guillaume Flandin who was like you should be rewriting everything in Julia now. Like if you want to be ahead, you know, like start writing Julia now. Yeah.
But I'm still not sure about that, right? I mean,
I know. I
people say that if you can kind of get number working, then that's the same performance improvement that you can get with writing out in Julia.
Yeah.
Thing is, problem is stuff doesn't always work in number.
Right.
You're gonna have to, you know, mess with it.
And I think, I mean, you know, Simon one year gave me his PyCon ticket, and which was like the first time that I saw Numba presented, and you know, and I think that was like, I want to say it was like 2013, this has been around a long, you know, this has been a long time coming, and you know, yeah, I don't know, yeah, if I would focus on Jax either.
It's got Google behind it.
You know, so, you know, we'll see, right? I mean, so I definitely, I'm super interested in like what the, you know, PyMC4 developers are thinking. You know, and so.
Hello.
Hey, Simon.
Hey, sorry about that. I was having some sort of crazy problem with my mic.
Okay.
I was here.
I have your
It was so painful. I was like reaching out to the screen. I'm here. God Almighty, I'm here.
Well, I forget when, you know, I forget there was like 1 year you couldn't go to PyCon. You gave me your ticket, and
the local one out of Mission Bay they were having, right?
And I saw I want to say it was
High Bay.
Travis Oliphant, or no, who is it? Yeah, I think it was. Anyway, it was Numba. I mean, like one of the things I got to see was Numba presentation.
Yeah.
And we were also talking about Conda versus Pip versus, you know, system.
Yeah.
Packaging. And I know you've got strong opinions that none of it's being done right.
Well, I mean, things are getting accomplished, but it's sort of, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, hacks layered upon hacks. You know, I was there for it all. I remember Phil Elby or whatever his name was with setup tools and stuff.
Yeah. That's
the latest fun thing, and I'm just going to take this opportunity to gripe. I have a small application that uses tkinter, and I don't know if I'm the only person in the world that actually uses TK for graphical user interfaces anymore.
No,
but
FSL and FreeSurfer both use it. I was installing Tix recently.
Oh wow! Which is it's a perfectly serviceable thing. Everybody fell in love with WX widgets.
Right.
How do you spell what y'all are talking about?
Oh, sorry. So TK is literally TK.
Could you type it out for me?
Oh yeah, and Tix TIX. All right, sorry.
I'm calling UTK. It says University of Tennessee, Knoxville. What is that? What else?
Oh yeah. Well, so a lot of that. I mean, you know what's right there, of course. I mean, so much of our numerical stuff came out of Oak Ridge. I you know, I don't know if Simon, if you remember Magma. This was going to be the upgrade from Blast. Anyway, that's another Oak Ridge National Labs.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I
Yeah.
didn't use it myself, but no. All this to say, Anaconda, they're good, but they're really, really good. The only problem is that in order to use tkinter, which is the default GUI system that ships, it's a thin wrapper around TCL-TK, Tickle-TK.
Yeah.
They don't. They need Python to compile free type support, so the fonts come out looking like garbage.
Yeah.
Basically, it looks like it's one of those things where it's been Xeroxed and then faxed back, and it's like, really, we got a Retina display in 2020, and so I've been poking them a little bit to try and get them to do something with that. And somebody else actually submitted a different build that it's sort of like an alternate dependency. Long story short, Conda should be the way of the future, but nothing's perfect. Nothing, this isn't a solved area. And like you're saying, the biggest problem is when you have C dependencies that need to be installed by the system package manager, but you want to use a Python package directly out of pip or whatever, or PyPy.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm always just afraid that it's going to become like active state.
Well, but see, active state was very valuable for a long time.
I know, but that's what I mean. Then it became then it became a dependency as opposed to a solution. You know what I mean?
Well, this actually, without wanting to go on and on at you, I've made no secret of the fact that I think Python went off the rails with the transition to version 3. And now they're running with the ball. They're having a lot of fun, but I don't think it's really as useful for the users to be productive with it. And then you've got, things like Numba, Nuitica, Cython. They're versions of Python that now do they stay with Python 2 or do they play catch up with Python 3 to try to support it? And interestingly enough, I found out PyPy has a Python 2 compatibility that it's going to keep pretty much forever because they need that to run our Python. So for all, when all's said and done, PyPy, which by rights should be the premier flagship interpreter because it's faster than the C Python interpreter.
You're saying to maintain our compatibility.
No, our Python. Our Python, restricted Python is a thing underneath PyPy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, despite getting away from Python 2, it's still going to be there. Long story short, use Julia. For scientific computing, use Julia.
That's
my bit.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Progress. The reason is progress, Alex.
Well, it's fun for its own sake. I consider, as a professional programmer and one who did it as a hobby before, I don't do anything else. We're complexity junkies. We like it. It's fun. And then people will pay us for it. So you're like, the sky's the limit. Let's, reinvent the Rust. Oh, don't get me started on Rust, man. And if that...
What do you have to say about Rust? I have limited exposure.
I don't. Yeah, really, seriously, don't, because I can. The bottom line with Rust is that if it works, if it eventually stabilizes, yeah, it'll probably be really useful. And because it has certain people like Mozilla pushing it, it's gonna get worked on, right? It's not going anywhere. The Rust evangelical strike force is a thing. Or evangelism strike force. If you talk about Rust on the forums, they'll show up and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, Rust, Rust, all the things."
A microcontroller though for Rust?
Yeah, they're working on that. I think you're getting to the point now where you can.
Where does it normally get run? On a server, on a desktop?
Its primary thing is for system programming and large projects. It's not intended to be used on embedded stuff, but there are people working on that. From my point of view as a programmer guy, Graydon Hoare, he's the main guy behind Rust. He's hands down one of the greatest, compiler guys in the world. and he gave a talk about the history of compilers, and he didn't include Prolog. He didn't even mention it. And I came to find out just a couple of years ago that there's a whole underground body of research on compiling with Prolog that just sort of, I don't want to go off on a huge tangent, but it got me to stop writing Python code. I've now given up on most conventional code, and God help me, I'm writing my own thing it's not even a compiler. It just generates machine code from, high-level logical descriptions of your problems.
I haven't heard anyone talk about Prolog in ages.
Yeah, it's slow and deep. I was talking to Prolog the other day. It's like the programming language of the elves or something, right?
Yeah, I did a project in Prolog during my master's like a year and a half ago. It was the only time I've ever had to touch it.
I had a friend of mine try to teach it to me 20 years ago, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's nice." And now 20 years later, I'm like, "Dude, I'm so sorry. You're so patient. I didn't get it."
Yeah, that's like the old school expert systems type. It was like its biggest use case in my experience was for like database. My project on it was taking a bunch of our transportation, like Nevada Department of Transportation is so archaic with all of their different databases that they have on like driver records and all the different like institutions and organizations in Nevada. And so I did this like big proposal to them. It was like, hey, if you like give us access to your data, I wrote this like Prolog script that would search out all the keywords in their thing, like each one of their data legends, and then merge it all into one big massive database. And they're just like, we like having our data closed off from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Machine learning involved for the system to learn, like, over here, this was the keyword, that, or was a little more cut and dry?
Well, it's like old school machine learning, like the original, like IBM Watson is an expert system, so to speak, where it's more of like a knowledge base instead of generalization and intelligence and things in that regard. So that's what Prolog was used for. Is
you throw a mess at it and it just kind of does a little bubble sort or something like that.
Or like searches like a big old database of information that it has and uses keywords and things like that.
Yeah, the relational model database is actually formally a subset of Prolog's data model.
Yeah.
So anything you can do with a SQL database, you can do with Prolog.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see why Jaden reached for that.
Yeah, and they're also getting at what I think you're getting at. There are people who research, making Prolog systems I don't want to use the term intuit, but to write programs. Like you say, okay, here's a giant body of data. Here are the kind of rules we want you to extract, and it'll actually build programs for you. Sort of meta learning.
Yeah, because the goal was that because they were getting their data from a lot of the same sources but recording different things, they would have data for like, the same car accident, they would all have different data for. And the only way that you could see that it was the same data point across 3 different databases was by really tracking down, like, all right, this is where it happened, when it happened, what kind of cars were involved. Okay, so it turns out we have 3 data points that are all actually from the same source. And that's what we use it for.
Yeah, and that sounds like such a Prolog-shaped problem. But definitely in terms of scientific computing, Python has a lot of smoke and noise and Sturm und Drang, or however you pronounce that. I've only ever seen it written out. Now I feel silly for saying it. Sturm und Drang.
Yeah.
A lot of noise and fire. There's going to be some progress there. But then you look at Julia, and you've got this tight integrated system, and they just produced that auto differentiation across the whole thing recently. Yep. And not only is that impressive in and of itself, but the way they did it and how easy it was, relatively speaking, was also really impressive. So, my 2 cents for scientific computing, you're really going to want to look at Julia and to a lesser extent R, as opposed to Python.
Say again, differentiation across.
I forget. I want to say it's called Yocto or Yando, or it starts with a Y. It's a package that does auto differentiation across arbitrary Julia code, including, recursive functions and things like that. It's ridiculous. And they did it by leveraging.
Okay, so it's just.
I'm sorry?
You're a little broken up.
this sound.
Yeah, too much interference on the sound, man. Sorry. I don't actually know much about Julia as such, but
I think we can find that. It was definitely there was a couple very attractive. You want to try again? There's been some cool applications that, and I just love the fact that in many ways with Jupyter you don't have to pick one.
And in Julia as well. I mean, like Julia knows all of Python.
Right.
Oh, really? So kind of like with PHP and JavaScript or jQuery, you can put Python in your Julia?
Yeah, exactly. Like you can call. I think you can call any Python library, certainly any like core Python library, directly from Julia. They have like a pretty tight, probably wrapper on it, and
You
it's
can't
the languages are quite similar. So, sorry.
You can't have a section of Python code you can just call libraries and then use more Julia.
Well, yeah, you could probably do that as well. But you can actually like import Python libraries inside Julia. You like import NumPy and run NumPy functions directly inside Julia.
Does it run faster?
Well, probably not. It's probably if it's a Python library. Yeah, you wouldn't use it for core stuff. You'd use it for, utils, I guess. Non high performance utils.
hey, I found the thing I was talking about with Julia. It's called Zygote. I just put a link in the chat. Differentiable programming system is able to take gradients of general program structures.
Is this supposed to evaluate code?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I knew in junior high, and I was working with like something called Blitz Basic, and I knew then, I was like, if I can just write a program that writes code, and I'm still, 10 plus years later, however long it's been. And it's like skinning a cat. We can do it, but it's going to take some time, I guess.
True basic. Yeah.
I also, during my geometry class, I was able to take Algebra 2 and Geometry at the same time. So in geometry, I just learned how to program on the TI-83 and did a lemonade stand game.
Texas Instruments, yeah.
Just straight basic if statement.
What I
That's
love
awesome
about Julia is that you can get the people, the people who are working on this are very accessible because you can, the entire Julia conference is still a pretty small affair, and so there's definitely been some really nice applications of Julia in some really hard, some very tough areas of inverse problems that in of itself would make the effort of running a new language worth it for the for the benefits that it confers already. Yeah. Let me. So it is almost 8:30 here. 11:30 for those on the East Coast, and just want to, so I've got I've got the slides from the ERP decoding. I'm particularly interested in adding these tasks to EEG notebooks. So I think that like these particular seven tasks, and let me just get the ERP core.
What are the tasks?
So I know that there's a B300 and a mismatch negativity. So mismatch negativity is auditory. I think the P300 is visual. And an N400 and an ERN. And I'm not sure what the ERN is using as its, it's obviously an error task. So I'm not sure what the
This is an ERN, not an MMN.
No. So the MN, there's a mismatch negativity. Here we go. So it's got an N170, a mismatch negativity, an N2PC, which I still haven't looked up what that is. Let me bring up the.
Is that the third part of the positive inflection of an N2? Is that what the C is?
It's. I think it is.
Right. I kind of worry about certain kind of ERP like
this is
ERP component things like the little,
this is
little squiggle.
Again, it's a very they bill themselves as the ERP boot camp, right? So there's no there's truth in advertising here. They are very ERP focused, but I think again, like the awesome thing about this is they made their data available. So there's 40 subjects in 7 different tasks, and even though like 40 isn't necessarily a particularly magic number in terms of N these days, the fact that you've got them on multiple tasks kind of semi makes up for it.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea for kind of a benchmark comparison thing with EEG notebooks, like try and get comparable results, comparable signals
from basically the person who wrote the book on ERPs, right? In the sense that like what they emphasize in this is their attention to methodology and ERP best practices. What I thought you would love about this is that in terms of their stimulation paradigm or experimental control paradigm, that they're trying to get good ERPs within less than 10 minutes. So like it's a paradigm set up for a relatively short data collection.
Right. Also good, yeah.
Also pretty damn perfect, right? And yeah, I mean, in some ways, it also gives you a really nice reference data set for like across 40 subjects. This is, here's where the biggest difference is found, and and you see it moving in this particular. So in their ERP core.
So that sounds like a good brain hack project or good hackathon project.
Yeah.
Keep it kind of in mind for when a good event comes up to have a go at that.
I mean, what would you say is the? There's an N170 already, isn't there?
Yeah, I guess it depends what's the stimuli for the N170.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, like in the EEG notebooks case, is there a reference data set?
Well, the stimuli is faces houses, right?
Yeah, but I mean, do they use do they reference a particular you know, like a lot of people for use like Grill Spector's.
Right. No, I actually don't know, and that's something that it would be nicer to be using a standard stimulus set.
Right? You know, again, like
I think Alexander, you know, did some work on trying to, and actually maybe I think that it's kind of buried somewhere. Like I think like maybe it's in his blog post. They come from somewhere, but
Sure.
I don't think they come from. Like it would be nice if it was a stimulus set that's been like used to death,
right.
and it's what everyone uses for this. And I don't think it's that.
Yeah. Well, that's something that I felt like I could be adding, since I'm not adding, you know, hardware support like Jaden. And let me just jump to the I'm looking through their SciArchive paper, which sorry, I put a link in the chat. So you've got. I think it was you though, John, who added. Did you add an auditory oddball?
Yeah, that's in the works.
Okay.
It works nicely. It's not in the repo yet, I think, unless it's in the sandbox, but it will be soon.
And what makes that different than a mismatch negativity?
I don't know the answer to that. There is an answer to that. I know that I understand the question, and I don't know.
Well, so I know that
mismatch is the difference wave, right?
Yeah.
So, what's different in terms of the paradigm? Like, no, like mismatch negativity is a difference wave of an oddball paradigm.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, you know, like,
and it's the M170. Well, yeah, 170 is like the.
So I mean,
I guess what
I'm saying is that, like, I feel like I can adapt yours to be, you know, I mean, basically looking at that script, it will be easy to see, you know, what changes would, you know, be necessary to just match their timing, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
Like that should be. I mean, I guess the only thing is, you know, again, like, I should totally know the difference in an oddball, but I sometimes think of an oddball as basically being, you're asking the person to be doing something, and that's different in terms of, you know, what components you're looking for, or like the time window that you're looking for. And the mismatch negativity is like much earlier, and the oddball, you're asking them to count the odds or to press a button or just something like that. And, like, you know, but
I wasn't aware of that. That might be a
mismatch negativity, where you give the person a task, like they're reading the newspaper and you're just presenting tones.
Yeah, but it's still an oddball paradigm, right? I mean, oddball is just you have standards and deviants.
Sure.
I think the definition.
Okay.
But yeah, if you can pull up the details, and the way the oddball thing that I've got at the moment is it's kind of flexible. So either we can have some kind of general form that accepts arguments, or be straightforward to just have like a script that's specifically reproducing their one.
Yeah. Let me.
But I like the idea of having their stimuli for the visual ones as well.
Yeah. So mismatch activity was elicited using a passive auditory oddball task, modeled on Notnan, like pick one of 20, 30 papers. Standard tones. Oh, okay. So how do you do any kind of calibration for the I guess, yeah. Are you trying to do any calibration of intensity? Like
no.
How much, how is that person hearing it?
No. I mean, yeah, that would be a good thing to do, especially if you're working with old people. But we don't have any kind of functionality for that at the moment. How would you do that? So what we've done before, what I've done before is just the hearing test, like the beeps, and then get people's score on left, right, and then use that as a covariate. It's not calibration.
No, I mean it's a good question though. Whether I'm just seeing that they're giving us these dB for presentation, and it's just an 80-20 split on this standards and deviants. Like that's the easy part, right? And maybe just how they're randomizing the trials. And then other than that, they're doing the standard tone 80 dB and the deviant tone at 70 dB. Oh, and they're presented over speakers while the participant watched a silent video. But they do not specify which video.
David Attenborough, nature documentary.
So, sorry, did somebody have a question? Mm-hmm.
So what's the parameter that you're thinking about varying there, like a distraction task? Right. Yeah. I mean, what do you say, like card-carrying cognitive psychologists swear by this kind of stuff, right? So properly calibrating their experiments and properly quantifying all of these things. And people who do cognitive neuroscience, who kind of spend most of their time like trying to figure out how the brain works, they don't have quite so much time of day left over for the minutiae of the experimental design. But it's definitely important, and it's good to have. But there are some, I'm kind of blanking on examples, but there are some like really interesting phenomena that occur at thresholds. That where you want to find like the individual threshold, and there are perceptual things in particular, right? Like intensity thresholds, duration thresholds, kind of the duration of what do you call it? Kind of blank screens. You have like a RSVP, and you kind of have a gap, like a distractor, or what is a word for when you insert something inside a visual stream? There's a technical term for it. I think it's called a probe or something.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
There's a bunch of interesting psychophysics around those like thresholds of like how long you can insert a blank screen into a stream of video before people start noticing that there's subliminal messaging going on.
So I dropped a link in for this particular 2011 paper that they said that they drew their face and objects stimuli. Anyway, I'm interested to see how that matches up with what Geza used to use, but I certainly know, yeah. I mean, I take it these are available though. Let me see. The N2 PC was elicited using a simple visual search task based on Luck 2006. Participants were given a target color of pink or blue at the beginning of the trial block and responded on each trial whether the gap in the target color square was on the top or bottom. Okay. Are there any word tasks already in EG notebooks?
No.
No. Okay.
Nothing with language yet.
Well, they got a classic N400 from Holcomb and Kutas 1990. Mm-hmm. That takes me back. P300, active visual oddball task adapted from Luck.
What is the N400 one? Is it like a semantic incongruency?
Yeah, exactly. So a red prime word followed by a green target word. Participants responded whether the target word was semantically related or unrelated to the prime word. Yeah. And the P300s. So they definitely talked a lot about this particular P300 task in the ERP decoding webinar because this was very much what they were decoding, and it's coming out of like 2018 to almost 2020 papers of theirs, but it was definitely using this A, B, C, D, E letters in random order, and yeah. And then a lateralized readiness potential. Okay, and the ERN is based on an Ericsson flanker task. Wow, yeah, Ericsson and Ericsson 1974. These are old school paradigms. Yeah, but I mean, I think yeah, I think I've actually ran all these particular paradigms at some point.
So the lateralized readiness potential, that's
sort of
for like a pre-motor.
Yeah. So okay. So you know what? The LRP is actually coming out of the flanker task.
Yeah.
At least, yeah. So again, that so you're pulling out the LRP and when you've primed them, and you're waiting for as many error trials as you're going to get I take it that that's going to be the one where it's like they probably have the fewest subjects. They probably required a certain number of errors to be. So I did read this last week. I forget how many they lost there, or how many got included in the ERN condition, but generally they always had 30 plus subjects, even with I don't know if they had like too many blinks or they wanted to have a certain number of good trials. And yeah, I can probably find the table. They've got a table where oh, and they've got the YouTube for the video that the people watch, which is participants watched a silent movie of sand drawings. So if you are interested, you can also watch the but it's setting up things like getting the visual presentation to be within a 5x5 degree visual angle. that will take a little bit of explanation and practical advice for people to figure out in their setup. That is to control the amount of stimulation to the eye. I mean, it's like it's all it's very formulaic stuff, right?
Yeah, I think general consistent. Well, kind of both, but it's an example of just trying to lock down everything, lock down all of the moving parts, which we kind of don't do with with the way we're doing things, right? And it's going to be limited the extent to which we would even want to try and completely be really anal about everything that you are anal about in a lab environment. It's kind of overkill. Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, if you could like have some real-time just feedback of like, yes, you're in the right place now, stay there. That'd be great.
Well, I mean, I would love to be able to give people, advice on how to set that up. I mean, I think people would like to try. Oh, so you'll like this. So they've got their reaction times too.
Yeah, we should be recording those as well.
Okay, we're adding this to the list. It's okay, and so yeah, and this will tell you a lot. I mean, in terms of how well you are matching the task, right? Like to some degree, your subjects should really come in line with this. Well, I mean, this is definitely skewed towards college age. I mean, this is like young adults, so maybe that shouldn't match necessarily. Let me. Why is it not? So they're giving me all the. Yeah. This like I'm telling you, ERP Core is awesome. They just given you they've given you the data, and it's 30 channel, so it's not high density. It's not. But I think they did a really great job of talking about how they're still getting, how they're still decoding 16 different, frequency directions. I mean, so they were, in the decoding webinar, they're talking about, I mean, they're definitely using this T300 that comes from ERP Core design, perhaps more subjects, I'm not sure, but they are also using a just moving gratings. So this is something that Ghazali's lab did as well, right? They started with faces and scenes, and one of the things is hard to calibrate, especially if you're, like Adam's lab was focused on looking at healthy aging. How do you kind of calibrate your detectability of faces or things like that, right? So they switched to color dots and moving dots as something that could better be titrated per subject. And anyway, so in Bayes' study, so this is one of the postdoc of Steve Lux, who's now a professor at Arizona State, who did a lot of this work. Was like decoding 16 different directions of moving dots and getting pulling those out of 30 channel EEG, right? Where very much like the it looked a lot like these patterns where it's like the ERP is not giving you a dramatically, different scalp topography. It's this doesn't, it's not quite the same as their, sorry, maybe I've got the slides right here. Let's see if I can switch to, yeah. Okay. So this is Guillaume's paper with Steve Luck. So this is the 2018, and I think I can.
Morgan, I gotta head out.
Okay,
See you
James.
next week.
Take care. Hey,
You as well.
See you, Jaden.
See you tomorrow.
Anyway, I just dropped in the decoding, a link to this decoding paper. Yeah, so right there. sustained EEG activity could be used to decode the remembered orientation of a stimulus. Very much. I mean, this is exactly what we were doing, and it's in Adam's lab, or I was following up on, I think, like Ted Zanto's experiment, and doing that in hyperthyroid patients. Let me just pull this over. Well, so there, certainly this is, in terms of image databases, this is like the effective picture something. Not that this is the same thing. This is slightly different, John, in terms of this from their decoding webinar, but this IAPS images database is commonly used as a database for affective images. And then he kind of goes through talking about the essence of decoding. Which, again, so I think this was getting at how they were, like you can really see Moab in this particular slide, or certainly like you could talk about Moab's choices in terms of what kind of like how many kind of like subgroups of data can you make so that that you can basically convert a single data set into a set of training and test data, right? And there's not Moab's got some particular choices that it makes, and those are probably somewhat drawn from the those are definitely drawn from the amount of data that they have. Or I think one of the things that we can say about Moab's motor imagery data sets is that they weren't necessarily collected to be done within, say, a 10-minute data collection time, right? So like there's a lot more, and so Moab's default, I believe, is for 4 folds, for instance, right? But those are in a sense like details, and what you can see is they've got a really nice overview of how they're using their ERP studies in the same way that Moab's using motor imagery, and remarkably, it being remarkably efficient at decoding, even when the scout topography doesn't seem to suggest that there's it doesn't seem visible to the naked eye, but the decoding is quite robust. It's not, I would say it's kind of BCI good in the sense that they are like getting like good 80% reliability, and it still really I'm glad I caught it, and you can catch the videos, and looking forward to producing the M&E version of this, which I would say is actually the Moab version of this, because you know, Alexander's already created all the kind of the infrastructure for doing exactly what they've added to ERP Lab, right? So ERP Lab was already this kind of like ERP focused plugin for EEG Lab, and what you really need is all this kind of repeated, you know, repeated randomized grouping of data for classification, you know, train test purposes, right? And that's exactly what Moab's doing. So yeah, I think if there's one thing that they're doing that is a little different, is that they care about time, you know, and so Moab's historically taken a more, you know, whole trial labeling approach, or, you know, classification approach. They're, you know, given their kind of Cognera focus, they're particularly interested in decoding things in time and knowing, you know, knowing timing. But again, it's a relatively easy thing to add, and I think that there are ways in which it could even be done better. You know, it's a very I don't want to say, I don't think brute force is the right, you know, but yeah, I mean they're just testing every time point. And so, you know, this like they're saying here, this is, you know, at a particular site, at a, you know, the value at a particular time. And yeah, so I know it's midnight, it's pumpkin time for those on the East Coast. I want to let those that have hung in until midnight a chance to duck out. I'm super glad you joined, though, Alex. I had some interesting. There's a really interesting PNAS paper that came out this week on basically eliciting fear in VR. And yeah. Well, so I think it's interesting. I mean, there's a couple of really interesting things. So one was
how did they try to induce fear? Let's get that covered first. Was it by something being scary around a corner?
Hey, Ryan, do you have that?
Yeah,
You have that link?
I can get the link in just a sec. I'll
I
put it up.
gotta log into Messenger on Linux here.
Yeah, I can get
The
it.
way to scare somebody is to have a black screen and then a loud noise with a disturbing image.
Yeah, that's the simple one, but I think it was really cool in this situation where they also were checking how distance affects it, like the idea of a personal bubble, and whether the thing that scares you is in or out of that bubble.
It was conclusive?
Let me just
Yeah,
find it. Yeah, it's called proximal copy link address.
So
Wait,
do we,
this.
where should I post you know, good VR tech links? Because I don't think we have a VR. I mean, I
There is a VR Slack channel, but also there's the Discord, which there's already a VR channel there.
Okay, I'm gonna post this in Discord because I've got that.
Yeah, I added like I think 60% of all the channels to the Discord. If we want to try copying over stuff. I don't remember if there's an easy way to just pull everything in.
Did you, so Alex, did you see the VR where they were using smells to give you a temperature change?
I'll post that in here as well.
I posted that in Discord, and well, it's super interesting. I'm looking at olfactory data right now, and anyway, it's just making me read up on like olfactory system. I did not realize that olfactory problems were associated with Parkinson's. Like you'd lose your sense of smell in Parkinson's. Oh, okay.
It's the most sensitive advanced biomarker, sense of
Gotcha.
smell.
I mean, I've only looked at Parkinson's patients because of psychosis. So like we've only looked at
That's medication related, right?
Is it? I mean, again, like we were given groups of, hallucinating and various kinds of hallucinations and not, and I was not given medication as a covariate.
Okay, so I know that kind of extensive L-Dopa and other medications can actually like cause psychotic symptoms just as an unavoidable consequence of you taking them because you have a serious motor problem. But yeah, maybe there's probably multiple routes to.
Well, I was super interested. I mean that there's almost no like olfactory MEG studies. Like I don't know if I'm just using my search terms poorly, but not much. I know I definitely know some of the fMRI literature of smells because Ed Rolls had this kind of gas mask setup that Fimrib had. Yeah, not seeing a lot of EEG of smells. Yeah. Anyway, it's then this link. Are you on Discord, John?
I'm not. People keep talking about Discord. What? Do I have to be on Discord?
No, no, you don't.
How does it work?
But the one thing is that the Discord messages don't get deleted. Anyway, it kind of came out of our discussion at the last diversity meeting, and that there was a solution, and so there is a NeurotechX Discord channel.
We set it up, and Pyconaut Ryan is one of the admins. If anybody else needs to be made admin or whatever, or if you'd like me to transfer ownership to you, I just set it up to get it started, but I don't need to be the owner of it. However,
I mean, until it becomes a burden, that's great.
the good thing that I can bring to the table though is just because I currently help administer some of the larger Discord servers out there. So as far as like what it can do versus Slack, it can do almost all the things Slack can do, but it has a couple pluses. The channel structure can be much more hierarchical, and I know that we specifically have many regional channels. So when I go to the Slack, I notice I couldn't find any I have to scroll through channel after channel to add a channel. There's like hundreds. 161, right? Yeah. So that means that a channel that's called something like diversity is like impossible to find because it's like in the D's, which is like on the third page or something, right? Yeah. So the plus of having Discord is better channel structure, free continuous real-time video, screen sharing. Basically everything we're doing in Jitsi, you can do in Discord in any of the voice channels with like live streaming, etc. Jitsi is still really cool because it runs in a web browser. So there's still like plenty of reason to hold these meetings on Jitsi because
Yeah.
Jitsi's awesome.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and John is no longer joining us. It was one of the driving forces on our switch, but they added end-to-end encryption. I thought that was exactly what John wanted. Anyway, I want to let John go. I want to let John G go, and
I'm in the middle of hacking, mate. I'm staying put
Oh,
for
okay.
a little while
okay,
longer.
cool.
It's okay.
Then let me get that PNAS paper, because yeah, it was particularly important for PTSD. Now, where should what channel on Discord, Ryan? General? All right, there, I dropped in there, Alex Peak. And did Facebook and Apple both had VR related announcements this week too. I don't know if you saw the
I missed
one that was here, I'll find that. The Apple gets a watch patent for vein scanning that translates gestures that control actions in VR AR games. So
they're using the biometrics from your skin.
yeah.
Does that sound like the Mayo armband, where they're using like the musculature to control something in 3D?
Well, so I mean, I guess, and like you're moving it, like Mayo, as I understood it, was like still EMG.
Yeah, I tried it. It's very much like a, you kind of just like use your muscles to control it.
Yeah, yeah. And there was Richard, there was a good open BCI demo on that somebody posted on Slack and LinkedIn. He was doing a kind of Mayo device. I forget the gentleman's name. He's posted good stuff before.
Yeah, EMG stuff is real. People that aren't looking to do serious paradigms and oddballs, EMG is a great quick start. That's my little EMG app that I made. Was you open and close your hand, and then you flex your arm, and you can go forward and backwards with a slideshow. And I wanted that slideshow to be meaningful images. So this was meant for my late mother-in-law before she passed away, and it was pictures of her grandson. And when I do that with pictures of my own son connected physically to my body, I feel more. I said this at the BCI 101 conference when we hung out after. I feel more connected to the pictures doing a simple brain-computer interface. It's like my body is controlling this, and you feel it, and you feel more connected to it. I still haven't spent extended periods of time in VR either, so I'm sure the sensation there is kind of similar.
We were suggesting, since you are doing VR BCI stuff, that you start with a Quest if you're looking to get one. It works really well.
Oh no, I'm gonna wait.
Okay.
I see you got a lab coat. Are you cold inside all day? Because I'm cold. Like my room is probably 78 degrees right now, and I've still got a coat.
Man's not hot. Man's never hot.
Where is that?
Just dropped in a link there. I just dropped in the Facebook new holographic optics.
Oh my goodness, this is streamlined. They spent some money on this.
They have money.
What does this do? This is AR or it says VR.
So
I've seen this used before. This holographic optics is. I'm surprised if they got a patent on this because this has been done for decades.
I don't think they got